Welcome to Charts Today Energy. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Thursday, the 25th of October, comes to you from London. And we have had quite a lot of turmoil in the markets yesterday. The US markets really falling quite heavily. Nasdaq down 4.7%. That's the biggest fall in Nasdaq since 2011. The market's just opening now, and we are seeing the Dow up about 0.5%. So the market's rising. The future's been pricing in a 1% rise on the Nasdaq. So taking a look just first of all, the dollar remains strong, and we are seeing 2% upside there. So that strong dollar is having an impact, and we're seeing the euro just falling against the dollar looking weaker and weaker. Against the yen, the dollar is actually looking stronger than it was yesterday, and still bullish in the medium and long term. And sterling, the UK pound, is falling lower against the dollar as well. So this strong dollar is really a theme that we're seeing throughout. Bitcoin, little changed. So taking a look at the Dow, first of all, we're seeing here the Dow is actually recovering a little bit today, but compared to yesterday's fall, it's really just a case of just stepping back. And the key thing is the bounce that we see on the Nasdaq. We've not got real-time data coming in yet. This data coming from Thomson Reuters Icon. The Nasdaq is still in a very bearish state now below the cloud. Yesterday's close gives us the lower low. Dow theory, we rise, make a lower high, and now the lower low. This is quite scary for the market, and so any recovery now, we need to see it moving to new highs to be sure that this was just a blip, and so it's very hard to recall the recovery at the moment. The Russell 2000 index was very heavily hit yesterday as well, and the Russell index has actually been bearish for quite a few weeks, and we're seeing that on the medium-term chart where we're below the cloud. We do have downside targets of 15 and 16% on the Russell, so quite key there. Just looking at the targets on the futures, 6% downside potential on the S&P future, and the Nasdaq, we have got multiple downside targets still in train. Minus 12% is a target that we're seeing pretty well all over the place on the Nasdaq, so that's also quite key, just to keep an eye on that. In Europe, we're seeing the FTSE down 0.25%. And the DAX down very slightly, and we're just seeing the gains in Europe being given up as the US opens, and the CAC Quarante, actually the strongest performer today, up just under 1%. Asia, we saw very big falls. Japan was down 3%, Hong Kong down 1%. China actually bucked the trend and closed virtually unchanged, so we did see that. India down 1%, the Aussie market down 2.8%. The one beneficiary of all this turmoil is gold. While stock markets are transitioning to bearish, gold is actually transitioning to bullish. No big surprises there. We're seeing a flight to gold as a lot of this uncertainty globally starts to ensue. So this data all coming from Thomson Reuters Icon or Metastock if you're running on Metastock, the same data. And here we're now looking at data coming in from Yahoo, and again the Yahoo Finance data is in real time, so quite an advantage here. And we're seeing the S&P actually up today about 0.5%, the Nasdaq up 1.3%, but in the scheme of things this is only retracing a small amount of what we saw yesterday. The Nasdaq has outperformed the Dow this year. This is the relative strength chart, by about 9%. It was as low as 5% at one point, but the Nasdaq has actually not suffered as much as the Dow until yesterday, so we are just seeing that kicking in. Taking a look at the stocks, the Amazon share price is up some 2.3%. A little bit concerned about this relative chart on Amazon. Now it's just starting to break down and breaking the relative trend. Looking at Alphabet, Google up 2.4%. Again, Google is actually looking pretty bearish and has really underperformed the last few months. And taking a look at Apple, of course, the largest stock in the market, still holding on to its relative performance. Really, Apple's having a big factor in just holding the market up at the moment. So that's also quite key. Facebook was pretty heavily hit yesterday, up 1.15% today. But really on a knife edge here on this long-term chart, we've got downside targets on Facebook, some 25-28% lower. So We are seeing quite big moves there. Microsoft was hit yesterday as well. They're back up 4.9% today, so they really are undoing quite a lot of yesterday's damage and not far from yesterday's opening price. So one of the bright spots there. Looking at Netflix, we see a bit of a recovery here. They were heavily hit yesterday, nearly 10% down, and Nvidia actually falling further this morning. And then the relative chart showing this run is really well and truly over 20% downside on Nvidia. So the star is falling from grace. Looking at Tesla, Tesla up nearly 9% on strong results reported after the close yesterday, and now sitting at 313. The weekly candle on Tesla there really big, showing really a move from 250 to 213. That's quite a big move. Probably the best week Tesla's had in a long time. Chart's still pretty bearish though, so we just need to be aware that that trend will only be broken as we break to new highs. So taking a look at the Dow, we see here the best performer in the Dow is Microsoft, up now 5.09%. Intel, we're seeing a lot of the tech stocks really driving the Dow at the moment. Caterpillar up 1.95%. Again, this data all coming from Yahoo Finance. Looking at the poorer performers, Merck, Johnson and Johnson. So we are seeing the cyclicals that will have done better in the down market are suffering a bit today. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, but it tends to be the ones that have fallen heavily that are recovering today. Looking at the 500 stocks, just clicking here, we see Twitter up 15%, Xanax up 13%. So we are seeing some quite big performances there. Twitter actually still bearish, but really probably finding some support here. Lots of upside targets still in place. On the downside, we are still seeing some pretty big falls. Align down 29% today, massive fall there, and Equifax down 17%. So there are an Advanced Micro, AMD, down 14%. So we are still seeing some pretty bloodied screens here. So you just need to be aware that we're not out of the woods on a lot of these stocks. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.